The Trump administration is pushing forward with a plan that could introduce so-called forever chemicals into Thanksgiving dinner.
You want to see what real independent journalism funded by the people for the people looks like?
You ever heard a story like this in America?
You're looking at it.
Congratulations for always being somewhere where mainstream media is not.
Flint, Michigan.
See you in Nevada.
Thanks to people like you, we can get the truth. Corporate media, they've been lying to us for years, and you go straight to the people.
You are the man. I'm glad you're here.
For as low as 16 cents a day, you'll keep us on the ground, covering the important stories the corporate media covers up.
I'm JT Siskowski for Status Coup. The Trump administration just approved a new pesticide through the Environmental Protection Agency that could be used on crops, including cereal grains, among many other use cases. And those pesticides would contain an ingredient that is a PFAS, or forever chemical. PFAS are a family of substances that are known as forever chemicals because they take so long to break down in the environment. This is what the Trump administration's own EPA has to say about PFAS. Some of the health effects that have been tied to them are reproductive effects such as decreased fertility, developmental delays in children, including low birth weights, accelerated puberty, bone variations or behavioral changes, increased risks of some cancers, including prostate and kidney and testicular cancers, reduced ability of the body's immune system to fight infections, interference with the body's natural hormones, and increased cholesterol levels and risk of obesity. So with all of this, you would think that the Trump administration would be taking great efforts to try and reduce the amount of PFAS that are in our environment, are in some of our household products. These chemicals can already be found in many places, such as, again, according to the EPA here, in drinking water, in fire extinguishing foam, in food packaging, in household products, personal care products, biosolids. One of the big offenders is anything that is generally water resistant, like nonstick pans, and some raincoats are also places where you would expect to find PFAS. But the Trump administration is not making an effort to reduce PFAS. Instead, it is giving its approval to PFAS. So this is the actual document from the Environmental Protection Agency that approves this new ingredient in pesticides called isocycloram. So this document from the EPA says this memorandum presents the rationale to support the final decision of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to unconditionally register, meaning approve, under federal law, pesticide products containing the active ingredient isocyclosaram. The document goes on to list many applications for pesticides containing this new PFAS, or forever chemical ingredient. I won't read all of these off here. Instead, I will direct us to some reporting from Time Magazine that does a pretty good job of summarizing some of these use cases, which include on golf courses, institutional settings, and decorative lawns, as well as a host of crops, including cereal grains, dozens of types of peas and beans, tomatoes, oranges, almonds, and more. Now, I don't want to act like this is going to be the thing that introduces PFAS into your home. It's likely that PFAS is already in your home and very likely already in your blood if the studies that have been done so far on forever chemicals are anything to go by. But it does represent this administration continuing to support corporate interests over the interests of public health. This is a post on X from Lee Zeldin, who is the head of the Trump Environmental Protection Agency, and he is responding to Democrats who were posting some of the headlines that were coming out of this announcement from the EPA. And he says, more fake news from the Democrats and their media allies. First off, the EPA approved single fluorinated compounds are not forever chemicals, not PFAS, and also not a new concept. In fact, it was the Biden administration in a public rulemaking that defined PFAS in 2023. And guess what? It specifically excluded single fluorinated compounds. So Democrats aren't just fear-mongering, they are outright lying. And here's the thing. He's not entirely wrong. It was the Biden administration's EPA that defined what is and is not a forever chemical, and it excluded thousands of compounds that I think any layperson would say, yes, that is a forever chemical because it takes so long to break down in the environment, and it contains the fluorinated carbons, these molecules that are linked to all of those health impacts that I just read off to you a moment ago. But the Biden administration went out of its way to say that you need two of those molecules together to become a forever chemical, even though a single one of those molecules is defined in other places as being forever chemicals. And because this particular pesticide ingredient only has one of those molecules in a chain, meaning they're not connected, other versions of those molecules are not directly connected in a molecular structure, well, technically, this isn't a forever chemical and therefore isn't a PFAS. He's getting by on a technicality there. But like I said, he's not technically wrong because this is how the Biden administration defined forever chemicals. I won't read off the entire technical jargon out of this document that was published by the Environmental Protection Agency, but you can see in here that it makes reference to CF, that's carbon and fluorine atoms together. It has to have one and one together, meaning two or more in a chain to be considered a forever chemical. This is how the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, if you've ever heard of OECD countries before, this is how the OECD defines what a forever chemical is. It says forever chemicals are defined as fluorinated substances that contain at least one fully fluorinated methyl or methylene carbon atom. You can ignore some of that science jargon and you can just focus on the word one. So where other organizations are defining PFAS or forever chemicals as this big umbrella that contains thousands and thousands of compounds that could be potentially hazardous to human health, the Biden administration created an opening for the Trump administration to come in and approve this forever chemical in pesticides that will be spread on food crops. But I'm not here to just draw false equivalencies, because while the Biden administration did create this sort of backdoor opening for the Trump administration to easily come in and approve pesticides that contain forever chemicals, and the Biden administration approved one pesticide during its tenure as well that contained forever chemicals, I'm not about drawing false equivalencies. The Trump administration has gone a hell of a lot further in serving corporate interests. And I'll underline just a few of the recent headlines that have come out about that here. So sticking with the theme of PFAS, we will come here to the EPA on November 10th, proposes changes to make PFAS reporting requirements more practical and implementable, meaning more friendly to corporate interests. Today, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency released a proposal to improve the scope of its PFAS reporting regulations. And here is the Trump administration just saying that it's taking issue with a regulation that the Biden administration put in place. And they say the rule exemplifies regulatory overreach by imposing a nearly $1 billion compliance burden on industry without establishing any clear framework for utilizing the collected data or demonstrating how it advances environmental protection goals. I would argue that just requiring companies to report when they are producing products that contain forever chemicals does help gain insight into this problem. One of the biggest problems, if you ask any scientist who studies this area right now, is telling you is that forever chemicals are, while they've been around for a while, their impacts on human health have really only come into more of a clearer understanding in the last decade or so. So getting more information, knowing where they all are in our environment, knowing what products are all contained in them, goes to help us wrap our arms around this problem and understand what we need to do to combat these forever chemicals. But the Trump administration here is saying, well, that might cost our corporate donors quite a bit of money, and not even if their argument is $1 billion across all industries. I mean, come on, that's pocket change for a multi-trillion-dollar economy like the United States has. But regardless, the Trump administration saying that it's going to cost their corporate donors, so it's not something that they want to pursue. And in fact, they want to go out of their way to axe a regulation that the Biden administration was already looking to put in place. This is a headline in the Associated Press about another EPA action. The Trump EPA moves to abandon a rule that sets tough standards for deadly soot pollution. The Trump administration is seeking to abandon a rule that sets tough standards for deadly soot pollution, arguing that the Biden administration did not have authority to set the tighter standard on pollution from tailpipes, smokestacks, and other industrial sources. So the Trump administration is taking direct aim at the clean air that you breathe. And this is what the Natural Resources Defense Council had to say about it. Trump's EPA abandons defense of national soot standards that saves lives. Last night, in an unprecedented move, the Trump administration's Environmental Protection Agency gave up defending the national health-based limits on fine particulate matter, also known as soot, that EPA strengthened last year. The EPA's court filing asks the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit to strike down the soot standard. So the EPA is essentially suing itself. It is asking the courts to come in and strike down a rule that it is already looking to implement. Quote, walking away from these clean air standards doesn't power anything but disease, says Patrice Sims, vice president of Healthy Communities at Earth Justice. Trump has made it clear that his agenda is all about saving corporations money, and his administration's EPA has nothing to do with protecting people's health, saving lives, or serving children, families, or communities. We will continue to defend this life-saving standard. And just to drive home that life-saving part of that life-saving standard, by EPA's own estimate, the current rule would avoid 800,000 cases of asthma symptoms, 2,000 hospital visits, and 4,500 premature deaths, adding up to $46 billion in health benefits in 2032. So there we see that the Trump administration is all about arguing about the cost. Or you have to think of the cost of this burdensome regulation when it comes to regulating a corporate entity. But as soon as it comes to actual public health, human health, well, then the costs are thrown right out the window. Who cares about that? It's just important that we be allowed to spew more smoke and soot into the air so that kids have to breathe it, kids have to get asthma, so that people get sick. It's all about the corporate bottom line, baby. And then this final headline comes from The Hill. The FDA withdraws proposal to require talc-containing cosmetics to test for asbestos. The Trump administration is withdrawing a proposal to require cosmetic companies to test their talc-containing products for asbestos, according to a public notice Tuesday. The Food and Drug Administration said it was withdrawing the Biden-era proposal in a new notice in the Federal Register. I don't know about you, but that's fine with me. I prefer my cosmetics to have asbestos in them. Of course, this is all part of this theme. All part of this theme. These are just a few stories from just the last few days. Now you piece together the last many months of the Trump administration and the years to come, and you start to get a real sense for how this administration is serving corporate interests, serving corporations before it is serving people, the people that elected it, put it into power. And you see the presidency on presidency building of corporate power in the way that the Biden administration created that opening for some of these PFAS concerns as well. So think about that when you are choosing your leaders. Who is really advocating for people? Who is really advocating for your health and for your safety? This is something that we can say here out in the open at Status Coup, where a lot of other media outlets will not be drawing these kinds of through lines through all of these stories to really draw together all of that corporate influence and how it is detrimental to you and your health. We can do that because we have your direct support. Just $5 a month at statuscoup.com/join. If you can help keep us editorially independent.